So thank you all for joining this webinar on increasing the ambition of product efficiency in the Southeast Asian region. This is a webinar in a series of seed events that we're doing in collaboration with the UK government. And in this case, we're joined by our co-hosts, the ASEAN Centre for Energy. We're going to go through the agenda just now, but we're going to start with an opening address by Dr. Nuki, who's the Executive Director of the ASEAN Centre for Energy. And then we're going to go on to a video presentation from Mr. Ken O'Flaherty, who's the Regional Ambassador for Asia Pacific and South Asia, COP26. Then we're going to go to a more technical presentation by Dr. Kevin Lane of the International Energy Agency, who's going to explain the initiative to us. And then we're going to have a panel of presenters from people who are going to help us explore the opportunities for increasing ambition on product energy efficiency. From Mr. Philip Olay of the IEC, from Ibu Helin from the refrigeration and air conditioning industry in Indonesia, and Ms. Eloise Burnett from the Carbon Trust. So that's going to be our order of play. We hope to be able to take some questions. So if you would like to write questions to us in the chat box, then we'll do our very best to answer them, time allowing. And now I'd like to hand, please, to Dr. Yuki Utama, who's the Executive Director of the ASEAN Centre for Energy, for his keynote address. Dr. Yuki, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Melanie, for the introduction. Honorables, Mr. Ken O'Flaherty, COP26 Regional Ambassador for Asia Pacific and South Asia. Dear panelists and colleagues from around the globe, good morning, good afternoon, and also good evening. First of all, the ASEAN Centre for Energy, or ACE, would like to express our sincerest thanks and appreciation to the International Energy Agency and to the UK government for inviting me in this important super efficient equipment appliances deployment and initiative regional workshop for Southeast Asia to deliver a keynote speech. This virtual workshop is very timely as it aims to share knowledge, experience, and best practices on designing and implementing product policies and programs. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN is a diverse and dynamic region, home to nearly 1/10 of the world's population, with a total population around more than 640 million people. Taken as a collective, the region has become the 6th biggest economy in the world and the 3rd biggest in Asia, thriving with annual average GDP projected to reach $20 trillion in 2040, despite the impact of COVID-19 recession. As a growing region, the energy demand of the 10 ASEAN member states have grown by 60% over the past 15 years, and it is projected to further increase by 2.5-fold from current energy supply over the next 20 years. Addressing this growing demand for energy, which is driven by both economic and demographic growth, has been a challenge for the region. An intensive partnership is bringing policies to actions toward a more integrated, efficient, and sustainable ASEAN energy community. It's fundamentally needed to meet the upward trend in energy demand, while also preventing irreversible damage to environment. In this regard, the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, or APAC, 2016-2025 was adopted by the ASEAN Energy Ministers in 2015 as an important guiding document that reflect the commitment of ASEAN member states towards this goal. Under this framework, a list of targets and activities was placed to enhance energy security and sustainability for the region. The targets and activities were set forth through 7 APEC-specific program areas, including energy efficiency and conservation, which is widely regarded as the most cost-effective way to address the energy challenge and to support the transition to a low-carbon economy, promote investment, and to create growth and also improve employment. This is why the ASEAN region is aiming to promote ambitious policies that will put energy efficiency first. And also this is why the region has committed to increase the ambition level for energy efficiency to the level of 30% under the APEC 2016-2025. It is an ambitious approach to energy efficiency, and it is needed across all sectors. This is particularly true for the buildings and industrial sectors, where there is a huge saving potential. To support the region, the ASEAN Center for Energy has been working on a number of energy efficiency and conservation projects, including the establishment of energy management system for industry, support the adoption of higher energy efficiency standards, promoting regional harmonization on energy efficiency product standards, capacity building, and also strengthen cooperation with key international partners. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, in the ASEAN, air conditioner ownership is on the rise. According to current ACE research, by 2040, about 42% of the households in the region are projected to have access to the air conditioners, which is 2.3 times more than in 2017. Improving the stringency of maps could reduce energy use by more than 50% in 2040. Fully recognizing the potential, the region worked together to develop a plan of action to increase minimum energy performance standards, or MAPs, for and supporting policies on air conditioners. This has led to increased awareness of energy efficiency and improved policies. However, the stringency and coverage vary significantly. This regional effort continues as we try to adopt mutual recognition agreements for product testing and regional compliance-based activities. We are also starting to undertake a similar approach for lighting. Seeing this achievement, ASEAN has developed good modalities and best practices on harmonization of maps for air conditioners and now for lighting, and could be further expanded with similar concept to other appliances and industrial equipment, such as electrical motors, refrigerators, washing machine, transformers, television, and etc. in the future. Successful harmonization of energy efficiency standards across the region will have a positive effect in boosting the regional trade. Industry experts recognize the potential of harmonization in encouraging inter-regional trade. At the same time, consumers will benefit from the harmonization as it will make clear many views regarding different labeling standards in the region. As ASEAN continues to grow because of its economic resilience and integration goals, it fully understands that for sustainable development to take place, and it will have to manage and mitigate the impact on the environment. In this regard, ACE will work with its partners and the global community at large in ensuring our part to keep the pace of the growth towards more dynamic and efficient region. On the way forward, in conclusion, ASEAN has exceeded the target by achieving 24% energy intensity reduction based on 2005 level. As ASEAN already at the edge of the APEC phase 1, ASEAN is currently developing the Appliance Phase 2, 2021-2025, and aiming to set more ambitious target of energy intensity reduction to reach ASEAN's currently proposed 32% energy intensity reduction by 2025. And it will require ASEAN to intensify the partnership and collaboration to expedite the whole process, particularly on harmonizing energy efficiency policy and planning, so that more can be done for achieving the ambitious energy intensity reduction in the region. But public effort alone will not be sufficient. Greater private sector's participation is critical to ensure the success of this regional initiative. ASEAN will continue to promote private sector's involvement and implement policies and to create enabling environment for energy efficiency partnerships. Proposals for more ideas and initiatives are welcome so that ASEAN can work with our interested partners to create best practice examples of behavior change and the overall impact of energy efficiency policy and technology. We are also looking at the cooperation to promote enabling mechanism or policy instrument to accelerate R&D and demonstration of energy saving technology by combining private investment with public financing. Also, facilitation of intra-ASEAN trade for efficient products and turning ASEAN into the hub for energy efficiency. Expand, harmonize, and promote energy efficiency standard and labeling on energy-related products. And also promoting energy efficiency for carbon mechanism in the light of climate change and mitigation goals of COP26. And also other areas that we wish to explore with our partners. We do believe that this SEED workshop will provide you the opportunity to discuss and elaborate recommendations from international partners and government's point of view that can benefit the region on the development of policy measures and instruments that will sustain the switch to more energy efficient appliances and equipment. Therefore, we would like to encourage you to share your knowledge and ideas in this workshop. So once again, many thanks to IEA and the UK government for the excellent support and arrangement for the workshop. We also thank all the participants, the panelists, of course, all the guests, colleagues from IEA and ACE, and also representative from international organization for your participation in this workshop. Once again, thank you very much for your kind attention. Stay safe and stay healthy. Back to you, Melanie.
Thank you very much, Pak Nuki. Thanks for that really great introduction and a reminder of why we're talking about this initiative in the ASEAN context. So ASEAN's collaboration on product efficiency is an example that's really useful to other regions in the world, and you've already made great progress, and hopefully an alignment with this type of initiative that's being proposed by the UK government under COP26 would help make even faster progress in ASEAN and also join the progress you've been making to other similar regions. So thanks very much for that overview. It was very, very helpful to set the context for today. So we're going to go to a video address now from Mr. O'Flaherty, the COP26 Regional Ambassador. Mr. O'Flaherty is sorry that he wasn't able to join us, but like I say, he's going to address us by video instead. Josie, over to you.
Hello, I'm Ken O'Flaherty, the COP26 Regional Ambassador for the Asia-Pacific region. I'd like to start by thanking the IEA and the ASEAN Centre for Energy for co-hosting this event today. It's great to be working with you both on this area of action, which is critical for COP26 and beyond, through the Super Efficient Equipment and Appliances Deployment, or SEED initiative. Thank you all for joining us for this discussion, despite the very difficult circumstances which are facing so many people right now. In the current context, citizens, communities and economies are now facing the two greatest challenges of our times: climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic. The response to both of these crises is, of course, rooted in science and innovation. As we recover from COVID-19, the decisions which we make today will either lay the foundation for sound, sustainable and inclusive growth, or they will lock in polluting emissions for decades and in doing so make our society more vulnerable. At a minimum, COVID-19 recovery plans should not undermine existing commitments to reduce emissions. We are encouraging countries to seize the opportunity to develop green, inclusive and resilient recovery plans that deliver for the economy and for the planet. Nearly 3 decades ago, countries came together at the UN and agreed to prevent dangerous climate change. Over the years, as the danger of climate change has become ever more real and present, the international consensus for action has also grown stronger. Our COP26 presidency falls during the first significant test of the Paris Agreement, and the gap to 2 degrees currently stands at about 15 gigatons. We need a 5-fold increase in action to close the gap to 1.5 degrees. Now, as we look towards our new COP date in November 2021, it's vital that the world comes together and takes renewed action to hold temperature rise to well below 2 degrees and take best efforts to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. Our UK, UN and France co-hosted virtual leader-level and climate ambition summit on 12th December on the 5-year anniversary of the Paris Agreement will provide a platform for leaders who are ready to come forward with Paris commitments. This is an opportunity for us all to show that we are stepping up our ambition to meet the Paris goals and that we are acting with urgency. Through our COP presidency, we also want to work with all countries to share the opportunities of clean growth and ensure international action on adaptation and mitigation is taken equally seriously to deliver the ambition set out at Paris. And we'll be working with businesses and organisations to take this action further to avoid dangerous climate change and move on to a credible path to net zero. So for COP26, we want to accelerate sectoral transitions in the global economy through our 5 core campaigns, which are energy transitions, clean transport, finance, nature, and adaptation and resilience. And we are, of course, working very closely with our partners in Southeast Asia on many of these already. We want to accelerate the energy transition from coal to green energy, including to boost efforts on product efficiency to support that clean transition. We see global transport emissions rising faster than any other sector and want to speed up the phase-out of petrol and diesel engine vehicles. In order to drive low carbon and resilient investment, we want to transform global financial flows. And we see that climate change and biodiversity loss are inseparable, and we want to safeguard our climate, air, water and way of life for future generations. And of course, we also want to stimulate greater action on adaptation and resilience to help communities worldwide prepare for the impacts of climate change. So I'll now turn to the focus of today's session, product energy efficiency, as part of the UK's COP26 Energy Transitions campaign. As one of the areas which brings particular importance within the context of both climate change and our COVID response, we must also recognise that it's often an overlooked area of climate action. There's many win-win opportunities for deploying energy efficiency policy in a recovery context. There's the potential to unlock wider benefits for boosting the economy, creating jobs, as well as improving energy security, reducing fuel poverty and inequality, providing health benefits, and of course, for meeting our international climate goals. For COP26, we want to use this opportunity to raise international action on the important area of product efficiency. Improving the efficiency of high energy consuming products, such as cooling products, is critical to managing future energy demand and reducing emissions, but also for improving energy security, accessibility and affordability. So we've launched, in close cooperation with the IEA, a COP26 product efficiency call to action as part of our broader energy transition campaign. We have 2 key aims. Firstly, to strengthen the Super Efficient Equipment and Appliances Deployment Initiative, SEED, to support countries to raise ambition and coordinate regionally on product energy efficiency more quickly, easily and at lower cost. And secondly, to drive this ambition to be consistent with the aim of doubling the efficiency of key products sold globally by 2030, focusing our efforts on air conditioners, refrigerators, industrial motors and lighting. We'll be working closely with our co-leads of the SEED initiative, India and the European Commission, to bring this action to fruition through SEED to the COP, as well as aiming to secure SEED's position as a key international organisation for coordinating action on product efficiency policy globally after the COP. To do this, we want to re-engage existing SEED members, expand its membership base further, focus its scope to support countries in achieving targeted action on key products globally, and convene facilitative dialogues to support best practice sharing. As we establish a new pathway to COP and amidst our international response to COVID-19, we want to mobilise your support for this initiative and for action on energy efficiency as critical to meeting both of those challenges. Ahead of COP26, we would very much like countries in the Southeast Asia region to join the SEED initiative where they're not already members. This will allow you to access knowledge and expertise from member countries globally on areas of challenge for raising product efficiency standards. Share your own best practice and lessons learned from the vast amount of experience in your Southeast Asia region, and to support the coordination of action on product efficiency. We can see that by coordinating action on product policy, particularly on minimum energy performance standards, we can make the market simpler for industry, as well as aggregating demand for high-efficiency products, bringing down costs for consumers and resulting in benefits for health and for resilience. We know that this area is of paramount importance for many regions, and with our close partners and all of you on this call, we can achieve action which is focused, meaningful and leaves a legacy that puts energy efficiency firmly on the table. Thank you all for your support, and we look forward to working closely with you in the months ahead.
So thank you very much for providing the video, and our thanks from the International Energy Agency to the UK government for the leadership that they're showing in this area of product efficiency. Now we're going to get into some detail, and we're going to turn to my colleague Kevin Lane, who's going to introduce the initiative and talk us through the proposed steps. And the idea for today's workshop is to show you what the thinking is, to get feedback on that thinking, and to hopefully bring us all together with an agreed position later on in the year. So Kevin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mel, and also for the two previous speakers. It was a great introduction to today. So what I'm going to briefly talk about then is our initiative, our call to action. And before that, what I'd like to do is just very briefly remind you what SEED is. So if you go to the next slide, please, and the next slide. And the SEED, essentially, or the Super Efficient Equipment and Appliances Deployment Initiative, came out of an intergovernment meeting in 2009, the Clean Energy Ministerial. And since 2016, the UK Commission, the UK, European Commission, India have been the co-leads of this particular initiative. And for the last year or so, the International Energy Agency has been the undertaking the operating tasks of this particular initiative. To date, there's 18 member countries in the SEED initiative, and its main things are really trying to get these 18 member countries and more to try and share knowledge, to use better tools, basically to try and highlight the benefits and increase the uptake of more efficient products through better regulation, whether that's maps, labels and the like, but also to increase the awareness and of manufacturers to understand the benefits of higher efficiency products, whether that's better value products and better markets for them to be dealing with. So ahead of COP26 next year, as Kenneth Blatty said, we want to look at 4 particular products to try and raise the action on these, and those are industrial electric motors, air conditioners, refrigerators and lighting. And as part of the SEED initiative, we'll be tracking and monitoring those progress on these particular products. So if we go to the next slide. And this is just a map to show the current 18 members that are currently part of SEED, and we're looking to expand that, but also some of our partners as well through CLASP, some UN activity, and also a technology collaboration program that the IEA runs. Would also add, we also tied into other initiatives as well, such as the Cool Coalition and the 3% Club as well. Okay, so now on with the call for action. So if we go to the next slide. So the COP26 product efficiency call to action, the main objectives are basically we want to significantly raise the efficiency of products. We said to double the efficiency, we might want to be more on some, perhaps less on others, for these particular products by 2030. We think this is a really important one for the delivery of our national climate change goals targets. So this will help deliver some of these improvements in efficiency and lowering carbon. Also, they should provide affordable and cost-effective products for consumers and business to run, so it's actually a benefit for consumers themselves. Also, as just mentioned, it should provide business with a very good opportunity for exporting more efficient products and higher value products as well. This initiative can also, for two of the products, refrigerators and AC units, tie in with more climate-friendly refrigerants as well at the same time. So it's a win-win situation that we have there. So if we go to the next slide. Why have we chosen these products? Well, these basically because they traded products internationally, they're very homogeneous. So in some ways, they're very easy to regulate, but also the potential energy savings from improving efficiency are quite significant. So there's billions of dollars of energy savings to be had from more efficient savings. We can reduce carbon emissions substantially by not having to generate electricity for these products. Motors globally is going to be the biggest area where we can save energy. However, in the ASEAN region, air conditioners will be relatively higher than this chart would suggest. So as Pakanuki said, air conditioners in the region, the ownership is going to more than double by 2040. So there's a very good reason to improve the efficiency of these products in the next few years. If we go to the next slide. So when we're looking at the performance of products, we're basically looking at different performance thresholds. So governments already do this around the world. They set target levels, whether they're for MEPs or whether they're very high levels for rebate programs or future aspirational targets. So what we're doing is we're trying to identify what are these particular steps on this efficiency ladder, so we can try and limit the number of steps that manufacturers have to aim for. That they can also be a good shortcut for governments if we just have a limited number of steps on this efficiency ladder. Importantly, governments will have to try and coordinate the way they use these steps. So initially, there might be endorsement levels in the future, which might become the MEPS level in 10 years' time. So using these categorical or discrete efficiency steps is quite an important step to do. And the way we usually do it is just have an underlying test procedure that we can measure it and then define what those thresholds are, plus any other requirements it may have. And then the next steps would be then to say, well, what are the policies that will help drive the market up that ladder? Next slide, please. It's more easily seen if we look at something like motors, where a lot of work has been done in this space already. The efficiency of an electric motor is done by an IEC test, 60034, and that test is quite useful because it's also not only says how you can test all different types of motors, whether it's 50 hertz, 60 hertz, different poles, but also what are the discrete levels that can be on. So whether it's an IE1 going all the way up to a very, very efficient IE5 motor, but which means that different countries can then use those discrete levels to set different policies. So we see Vietnam set IE1 as its MAPS level, whereas Singapore, using the same approach, has set IE3 as its as its MAPS levels. If we go to the next one, we can see India's done the same. They've set theirs MAPS level, the minimum efficiency that's allowed on the market, the minimum energy performance standard, to IE2. India's then also used these levels to say, well, what should an energy label look like? So they've set their energy labels based on this particular efficiency ladder that's already been defined separately through IEC, and we'll hear from IEC later. Next slide. So what we can also do then, or governments can also do, if we can go to the next, we can use these IE ladders, so keep going through. We can use these ladders to try and define, well, what can future MAPS levels be? So a country can have I1 levels now, but they can signpost where future MAPS levels are going to be. At the same time, they can also use high efficiency standards to have those as potential future MAPS levels. So these voluntary high levels can be a way to provide funding to the market to develop these high efficiency products that then become the mass products in a few years' time. And if we just click through a few more, and of course different countries, they can use different levels for their maps, and they can also introduce them at different times. So by having these discrete levels, it actually makes it a lot easier for manufacturers and supply chains just to have 1, 2 or 3 levels, that there aren't many levels involved. Next slide. If we go to lighting, this is one where there's been quite a bit of work already, and this one's a more complex product because there are many different types of products, and we maybe not at the same position as motors, but regulations can be, say, on the left, where we can have the efficiency of a general lighting service deliberately set to phase out old inefficient technologies. So we're seeing a lot of governments phasing out incandescence by setting such targets, which they may raise in the future. There are also other types of requirements it could have. It could be technology specific. So on the right, we see the efficacy of lamps. I think this is in India, probably the ones on the left, of where they think the different rating of different LEDs could be, and they may decide to raise those requirements up into the future. Click again. So here so far we've talked all just about the efficiency of lamps, and that is clearly what's driving the importance of the climate change reductions. However, there are also other requirements that we do need to be aware of at the same time. So when we're talking about lighting, we should be looking at the lifetime of products as well, the quality of the products, but also there could be other things. So for India, they also did have to look at the dust environment that they could operate in those, but also that the lamp still works after 1,000 hours, 2,000 hours, so the lumen maintenance is in there as well, for example. Next step. Next slide. This one looks a bit more complicated. This is now residential air conditioners, and around the world we haven't got a totally harmonized testing metric, but we just about there. So most of them are using an international standard to test motors, and there are a range on the market today. So some air conditioner maps are higher than others, although they're not exactly comparable because of the way they are described on the test procedure. It's a little bit more clear if I go to the next slide. Oh, sorry, for refrigerants, for air conditioners, we should also look at the refrigerant requirements in there as well. So there is a transition we've phased out ozone depleting substances, but we're also on a pathway with the Kigali Amendment to introduce low global warming potential refrigerants as well. These are quite powerful greenhouse gases, so we've tried to phase out hydrofluorocarbons with high GWP refrigerant. So we should do this at the same time as we raise the efficiency standards. Okay, so this is now residential air conditioning. It's actually one of the countries within ASEAN. So ASEAN's actually already embarked on this process in many ways, as I think Pakunuki mentioned briefly. ASEAN has already harmonized its standards across the region for ACs, and by 2020 they've all agreed to have a MAPS at 3.08 for these air conditioner products, and also it makes it a lot easier for the regulators in the region to do that. So by 2020 in this particular country, you can see the market on the left going from about 3 up to about 7 in energy efficiency performance. And the labeling standards and the maps on the 2020 have already been introduced. And what we're proposing is that there should be some sort of increasing requirements going up into the future that will perhaps double the efficiency of these products over that time. But these are just indicative ones, and this is really for the governments of the region to decide how they want to do that in the best way. But through ASEAN, they've already made a great start with for air conditioners already, and I understand lighting will be the next product as well, and they're looking for other products as well. So if we go to the final slide. So just a summary in terms of the call to action for this COP26 product initiative. Basically, we're targeting 4 products, and we're trying to improve the efficiency of these substantially by 2030. We'd like to do that by defining what performance tiers should be and what the stepping stones could be into the future. And we'd like this to be an aligned process between regions internationally to make it easier for all countries to get along that ladder. The next step, I guess, is to commit to raising that ambition further, and to do that, and then also set policy pathways to deliver this increased efficiency. And I'll hand back to you, Mel.
Thank you very much, Kevin. So this is a really important introduction, as I said, to the way we think that the initiative could work, and that the collaboration that we would hope to be able to achieve amongst governments. But as Kevin said, the levels and things that we're proposing here are a starting point of a conversation. This is going to be a long journey, and we want to get feedback on these ideas from the key stakeholders in the region, the governments, the industry representatives, the standards bodies, to see whether these sorts of performance levels are achievable, and to hopefully come to an agreement in the coming months as to what that ambition might look like. So thank you, Kevin, for the great introduction. We're going to go to some panel presentations now, so that we can get some views from different stakeholders who understand and have exposure regularly to different aspects of this standards producing process. So we're going to start very appropriately, I think, with Mr. Philippe Vollet. He's chair of the International Electrotechnical Commission's Advisory Committee on Energy Efficiency. And IEC have seen that many governments are using their standards processes for energy efficiency regulations, and so have set up this committee to consider this issue more broadly. So, Philip, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Melanie. So maybe we can. We'll start with the presentation. So I have the honor to chair the Advisory Committee on Energy Efficiency from the International Electrotechnical Commission, starting beginning of this year. Only it's my first nomination in this ACE. Before I was an expert representative on technical committee. So today I would like to present you what is the initiative within IEC to make energy efficiency something like transversal, in addition and not in opposition, in addition to what we can make within each technical committees. So you can switch to the second one. Sorry. Okay, why ACE? Why this advisory committee on energy efficiency? So you know that energy efficiency poses a challenge, and challenge is not only for policymakers, but challenge to standardization organization. Energy efficiency has a transversal and interdisciplinary nature. That's good, for example, for a product to be super or hyper efficient, but if the product is not so well used or is a system that is not optimized, the result will not be so efficient. So that's why we would like, in addition to the vertical, what we call the technical committees of IEC, that is a little bit much product focused, to have a system integration approach or application oriented global solution perspective. So target for us is not to say that the sum of the optimum is not the global optimum. So this is not only because the horizontal nature of the energy efficiency, but it is also because very often it's an holistic approach provides much more higher energy efficiency potentials. So that's why ISE and the SME from ISE has set up this advisory committee on energy efficiency a couple of years ago. And we are quite a newly created advisory committee. And I will present you. Next slide, please. Okay, and why do we need to create such a transversal awareness on energy efficiency? Because we see that despite many identified benefits of energy efficiency, there are lots of barriers to its wide adoption. So barrier can be a lack of awareness of the savings. Barrier can be focused on devices instead of system, and once again we can do both, and that brings to lower return on investment. Barrier because we focus on low initial costs versus the full life cycle gain we can reach with such an approach. Additional barrier can be a lack of incentive because the user is not necessarily the payer, and so on and so. So standardization can play an important role in overcoming some of these barriers. Next slide, please. So that's why ISE has set up this advisory committee on energy efficiency to coordinate its activity in its domain. So ISE deals with energy efficiency matters that are not specific to one single technical committee of the ISE. ISE is responsible for the assignment of horizontal energy efficiency aspect and requirements, so the standards that will apply to more than one unique technical committee. ISE provides also guidance for implementation in a general perspective and for a specific sectors. It encourages system and systemic perspective for the development of standards for energy efficiency, and we provide also support for a system coordination. And to do that, next slide, please. We have developed in the past years 2 guides to help technical committees to provide guidance into ISE technical committees. The first guide is so-called Guide 118. It is inclusion of energy efficiency aspect in electrotechnical publications. So these guides give guidance on how to consider energy efficiency aspects when we prepare ISE publication. So he helps all the technical committee and its subcommittee from ISE to consider energy efficiency in their future or existing publications. And the second guide, 119, is a little bit more or to prepare the preparation of energy efficiency publication and the use of basic energy efficiency and publication and group energy efficiency publication. So these guides define a little bit more the procedures for the preparation of energy efficiency publication, and it describes the relationship in between the technical committees within the group energy efficiency functions. So the first one, 118, is a little bit more how we can provide support to consider all the aspects on energy efficiency. The second one is a little bit more the procedure to do it. Next slide, please. So, and to illustrate that, all those guides, we have provided 2 case studies to illustrate the practical example on this this approach and how the guide 118 can be applied. The first case study is a little bit interesting because it is dealing with low voltage electrical installation. So it was very well introduced by the presenter and Kevin also. We know that the worldwide population in cities will move from around 4 billion people in 2018 to more than 6.6 billion people in 2050. And it represents 80% of the carbon emissions. So we are in front of a huge challenge to reduce all that. And we know that buildings are responsible for something like 40% of the worldwide carbon related CO2 emissions, according to a United Nations study in 2017. And within this 40%, it is something like 28% for buildings operation and 11% for building industry. So buildings are very a key important for that this challenge of the future. And if we consider, for example, the low voltage electrical installation for a building, if we make it efficient from the beginning, then it will remain for the full life duration of the building. And you know that buildings are constructing for something like 20, 40, 50 or more in some countries of the world. So building represent 40% of the global energy demand. A significant part of this energy is supplied by electricity, so concern of the International Electrotechnology Commission. And therefore, the overall efficiency of the low voltage electrical installation is K. So this use case we have developed is based on the group energy efficiency publication, this IEC 60364-8-1, that is low voltage electrical installation, and we have a specific chapter on that, that is how to make it efficient. So functional aspect, energy efficiency, and provide a normative assessment methodology to assess your electrical installation from non-efficient to, or normally efficient to hyper efficient on that. So this case study one illustrates how we have used this guide 118 to publish and provide this IEC 60364-8-1 standards. The second one, next slide please, applies to motors, and that was also very well explained before. Industry motors are also very important for buildings, but industry also represents 30% of the world emission of CO2. So motors are also key for that. So the second case study is about electric motors. The biggest user of motors is industry, and industry consumes 40% of global electricity. That's a large majority of drives electric, motor in machine, pump, fan, compressors, convenience, and so. And if using the best available technology will typically save 4 to 5% of all electric motor energy consumption, it is through the optimization of the complete system. So I mean motor, driven equipment, converter, control equipment, and strategy, that much larger saving can be achieved, 20 to 30% of all electric motor system energy consumption. So this second case study is also very important because we, in addition to the first one, we cover a large majority of the CO2 emission for both building and industry. And that's two case study explains that how we can use this system and systemic approach to ensure an optimization of the efficiency of the full system. Next slide, please. I would like to present also an initiative from the Advisory Committee on Energy Efficiency, that is so-called KSEMS, that started maybe 2 years ago, something like that. KSEMS is a coordination and alignment of IEC and ISO standards for energy efficiency electric motor driven systems, convened by Mr. Martin van Verkoven, that is member of ACE and that leads this initiative. Next slide, please. If we have a look to the full electric motor driven system, so I will not speak about the power supply and not speak about the transformer, but then we enter one component of this electric motor driven system, that is the controls. Then we have for sure the motor itself. Then we have the coupling and things like that. And then we have the driven equipment. And then we move to the application. Next click, please. Some part of this full electric motor driven system is hosted by IEC. The other part, next click, please, is driven by ISO. That's why we have this joint IEC-ISO initiative to ensure that we can address altogether the full system approach. Next slide, please. And you see that for the motor control, for example, it is about the IEC TC22 and IEC TC121 that are dealing with that. For the motor itself, it is the IEC TC2 that was created in 1911. For the mechanical equipment, it is the ISO 41 and the ISO TC 60. And for the driven equipment, then it is ISO TC 115, 117, 86, and 118. And then we have the ambition to offer a platform for all of them to exchange all together to ensure that for sure we have defined some standard for our own efficiency within our respective technical committees, but altogether, if we can have a system and systemic approach, we can do more and we can propose and set up some text in the future. Next slide, please. So this Kaizen project, so-called, it was a task group 6 from the IEC Advisory Committee on Energy Efficiency. The goal and the generic is to provide a platform to initiate and organize coordination on an element activities in between IEC with IEC, but ISO with IEC also, and so initiate concrete cooperation between IEC and ISO TCs on energy efficient electric motor driven system. We have something like 60 members within this initiative. The first meeting was last year in Tokyo, Japan. The fourth meeting will be this year. You understand why within teleconference, and we have a huge aim on this initiative to provide more efficiency for the full system approach and systemic approach addressing the energy efficiency motor driven systems. I think I'm not so far from the end, Melanie. Next slide, please. Yeah, for information for sure, all what I've presented you is you can find it in the ic.ch ACEE web page, and I will encourage you to visit it for sure. Thank you. I think you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Philip. And so a really important introduction to one of the processes that's absolutely essential to product efficiency programs. The work of the technical committees of the standards bodies is an essential part of this, and it's something that governments all around the world rely on in order to be able to have effective product efficiency programs. Clearly we have to be able to measure these things before we then set our performance standards. So thank you for the introduction.
Thank you, Millie.
It was an honour to be one of the founder members of ACEE a few years ago, and it's great to see that this work as we envisaged it is going on well. And I think the guides are particularly important for getting everybody on board to this process. So thanks for that. And also for whilst we're talking about product efficiency here, reminding us that systems efficiency is also important and actually much trickier. And so it's great that this process has started to try and advise those sorts of policy measures too. So thank you. And stay with us. Hopefully we'll have some questions in a short while. So we're going to move now from standards to products, and we're going to hear now from Ibu Elin, who's based in Jakarta, and she's an expert on refrigeration and air conditioning, and has been very involved in standard setting in these products. So, Ibu Elin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Melanie. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. As Melanie mentioned, my name is Herlin. It is a great opportunity for me to share with my experience with you on supporting my country, setting standard and labeling, especially in a cooling sector. Next slide, please. I would like to share with you my work experience, how I start supporting this country. Please allow me to share with you a bit about my experience. I was actually a lecturer in refrigeration and air conditioning engineers department. When I was a lecturer, we realized that as a tropical country with hot and humid ambient temperatures and high population, Indonesia needs a lot of refrigeration and air conditioning technician. And so it brings us to develop another polytechnic in this refrigeration and air conditioning sector in Indonesia. And when I start working with the government, it was for HPMP stage 1 proposal development on 2009 and 2000 until 2011. It was under UNDP. Then I realized that to talk about environment friendly cooling sector, it is not about refrigerant only, because most of emissions come from energy. So yeah, I just realized from that moment, yeah. And then I was a president of ASRI Indonesia chapter in 2019 until 2015 and 2016, and since then I'm the board of governor of ASRI Indonesia chapter. In this, my role in this ASRI, of course, our job is to share, to transform the technology to all stakeholders. So we have a good communication, a good understanding about how industry in Indonesia, how the air conditioning industry in Indonesia. And I also have experience as a technical consultant for Green Chiller Nama project. Also, you can see from my slide that I am a technical committee from National Standard Agency, and now I'm one of the program advisor of clubs in Indonesia to advise our government on the appliance and equipment policies. Like I mentioned before, that this is, if we talk about an environment-friendly system in cooling sector, it is not about refrigerants. It is more about energy consumption. Yeah, if you see this this chart, I used from Green Chiller report that developed on 2017. It is clear that the energy consumption, it is about nearly 90% of emission that produced by air conditioning system, especially in, this is from AC split. Next slide, please. So since then, of course, everybody already know that the standard and labeling program are very important, because we see that huge energy saving potential from these energy efficient products considered current technology availability. Yeah. I'm with clubs and we developed we did end use market end use survey, and we found that Indonesia has a huge opportunity to get this saving potential on energy efficiency by this standard and labeling program. And the standard and labeling program will providing authoritative guide to select high performance product for the user. So if a government set this standard and labeling, then they protect their people. Yeah, that's the soul of this standard and labeling from my point of view. Yeah. Next slide, please. This is what I found barrier on standard and labeling program in Indonesia, especially in the air conditioning system. There is a still significant gap in energy efficiency knowledge and consumption for the people here in Indonesia. From the end use survey, we found that only 6% of population in Indonesia has air conditioning in their houses. Yeah, only 6% of Indonesia's population. They are, of course, middle class and upper class. The middle class tends to start to worry more about electricity bill. So if they have to invest new air conditioning system, they make a decision considering the energy performance. But for upper class, if they are lack of knowledge in energy performance, then they still don't care with this energy consumption on air conditioning investment. And unfortunately, most of people doesn't understand yet about environmental issue from energy consumption. If I talk to my colleague, my friend, if we talk about environmental friendly or green issue, they only think about water, they only think about refrigerant, they only think about plantation. We have to have a we have to do not cut the trees and have to take care of water and something like that. Not about the energy consumption still. Yeah, that's also a barrier in Indonesia still. And another barrier, of course, market price. Still for high energy performance products are still expensive, and still too many low quality products with very cheap price in the market. Unfortunately, this situation brings the manufacturers feels not confidence to lead the market transformation towards this high energy performance product. So government should take care of this, not only waiting for manufacturer or industry to transform the market by themselves. Next slide, please. So Indonesia already did a lot of program, actually, market study on electrical appliances that supported by ADB, supported by CLASP and other donors. And we already setting maps and labeling policies for lighting and air conditioning that I would like to share with you more detail on the next slide. Public awareness, they already did a public awareness, and all the common programs already did actually in Indonesia, including compliance for this regulation. Compliance already good in Indonesia, so there are no AC split without labeling in Indonesia, without label. So Indonesia started the maps for air conditioning in 2015 with low level of maps because we don't have any data yet, so we put still low level. From this situation, we found that more than 90% product in Indonesia's market already 4-star. Yeah, so since and these policies will be revised in every 2 years. In August 2017, the regulation revised. It becomes revised by phasing out the 1-star product. Yeah, so Indonesia did not change the maps level, but they didn't allow 1-star product to be sold in Indonesia or imported. It was August 2017, and since August 2020, the second revision was made, and the 2-star product is phasing out now. So with this revision, then actually the minimum minimum energy performance product that in the market in Indonesia already the same as similar as ASEAN Shine program. Indonesia commit with this harmonization, but unfortunately, when we calculate the emission with this level of maps, there is no significant reduction for emission. So I think this harmonization maps in ASEAN is still too low for Indonesia, especially. Next slide, please. So actually, I just want to share with you my conclusion about this standard and labeling in Indonesia or in our region. Standard and labeling program are very important from my point of view as a industry representative, as a private sector. And regional harmonization, of course, will help to facilitate fair market transformation, yeah, and empower manufacturers to innovate simultaneously and to provide high quality product. But still, it will not give any impact if the level is too low. So if we want to have a regional harmonization, from my point of view, please make it high. So we can see we will get the impact from this harmonization. This is all my point of view, Melanie. Back to Melanie, and thank you everybody for your kind of attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu Helen. You made some really, really important points in that presentation that I'm really pleased that you raised. A couple of them that we've been doing some research on recently, the concept that more efficient appliances are more expensive and therefore people can't afford them. So the IEA and other organisations have been doing research on this subject recently, and in the market surveys that have been done of the ASEAN region, we can show now that there are more efficient products available at less than the average price of the products that are available. So you can get efficiency without extra cost. And people don't find it difficult to believe that, but you know, the evidence is there to show that that's now the case. So that's a really important point to have raised, I think. Also, the point that you make about the setting standards at maybe too low levels. There seem to be two reasons. Sometimes governments do that when they very first start a program in order to get manufacturers involved and to get to understand the markets more. But the big thing, of course, is having good data on the market. If you know the market well, you can avoid those sorts of problems where you immediately introduce a program and everything, you know, most things are forced out. So another thing that we've been doing recently is trialing some innovative techniques for collecting data on appliance markets, particularly in ASEAN and specifically in Indonesia. So we've been using web crawling techniques, internet searching techniques, also crowdsourcing of data collection. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to demonstrate how these sorts of things can give governments better information much more quickly and regularly, so that they can make more informed decisions about where to set these levels. So really, really important points, thank you. And also, I suppose the other thing is that this ladder that we're proposing, if you publish where you want to go, then the manufacturers are much more aware of what the market transformation is over a period of time. And we spend perhaps too much time just talking about what the next level of MEPS is, what the minimum is. If we have this idea of projecting where we want to go in the future, the manufacturers have an opportunity to respond and time to respond. So, great points, and thank you very much. So now we're going to go to Eloise Burnett from the Carbon Trust, who has a challenge to follow those presentations. And she's going to be talking about a specific programme that's been funded by the UK and being managed by the Carbon Trust in the region. And I'll leave it at that, Eloise, and allow you to introduce the programme yourself. Thank you.
Thanks, Mel. Yeah, definitely building on some great subjects from the other speakers today. So, yeah, I will get started. My name's Eloise Burnett. I'm the Southeast Asia Manager at Carbon Trust Singapore. Next slide, please. So, Carbon Trust, we provide expert strategic advice to support action on climate change and sustainability. We've been going for about 20 years now and actively globally active with 8 offices. Southeast Asia is actually our most recently opened office, and the team in Singapore are focused on supporting the public and the private sector on their energy transition and sustainability goals. Next slide, please. So today I'm just going to talk briefly about 2 tools which are supporting the uptake of energy efficiency products. And this is demonstrated by 2 projects that we are actively working on at the moment. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So just a quick introduction to the program that Mel briefly mentioned. This is the ASEAN Low Carbon Energy Programme. So this is a UK government funded aid programme that's concentrated on 2 pillars of activity: green finance and energy efficiency. We are leading the energy efficiency arm of that programme, and we're delivering projects in policy, regulation, or promotion and awareness raising, looking at product standards and launching pilot projects. And we are active in 6 countries, and the programme is running up until March 2022. Next slide, please. So under that programme, we are actually currently working on a project with our target countries to support the uptake and implementation of minimum and high energy performance standards for electric motors. So essentially an active project that's working on all the subject matters that have been talked through today by the other speakers. We're taking a cross-country approach to catalysing national level progress on MEPS and HEPS, and we're delivering work in 4 key work packages which are supporting the key steps of market transformation. So firstly, we're generating the evidence base to justify action on electric and on energy efficient motors, quantifying the greenhouse gas emission reduction from the increased efficiencies. Then we're going to look to try and harmonise standards across the region, so looking at the progress at a national level of the adoption of the most recent international standards, and try and raise them and accelerate the adoption of the most recent versions to bring them in line with international best practice. And then looking at developing a national roadmap for MEPS and HEPS adoption. Then we will be also reviewing at the same time and working with the governments to improve the monitoring, verification, enforcement frameworks for electric motors at a national level. So there is varied progress for MEPS for motors in the region, from mandatory MEPS to voluntary to no progress as of yet. So it means that we're going to have to take different approaches in each country and really try and support the countries and where they are struggling the most at this current time to make progress. A couple of key considerations for us of this project is that, as it's been mentioned, end users of electric motors are often predominantly factories, which presents a potentially really good opportunity for the developing the market for ESCOs. So how are we going to tie out the outputs of this project to developing the ESCO market in the region? Also, there are no major manufacturers of electric motors above 0.75 kilowatts in the region. So as we're looking at MV&E frameworks, it's really important that we look at controlling and monitoring what is coming in and out of a country. So ensure that equipment is coming in, is up to standard, and that framework's there to support that. Next slide, please. Previous slide, please. Thanks. So as Kevin has really already talked through, it's this clear pathways for change. So whether you call it a roadmap, whether you call it a ladder, whether you call it a pathway, all it is, it's allowing preparation from different stakeholder groups to ensure this can be successful. And importantly, it really increases acceptance of these changes. So for government actors, those who will be in charge of implementing these changes, enforcing regulations and setting up the processes and frameworks for actually implementing the changes as they come through. For manufacturers to abide by new regulations, review their products and hopefully even innovate to meet thresholds as they come through. And then finally, of course, for industry. Considerations and preparations need to be taken for their operations, and also consideration of what the opportunities are. So as Philippe has also mentioned, what is the system's approach to optimize efficiency in their operations? If you're upgrading one piece of plant, what else can you do to generate efficiencies across the system? Next slide, please. So on to my second subject, which is another tool which drives the uptake of better performing products, and that's technology lists. Technology lists are not new. They've been going on for decades. The UK's energy technology list is one. Singapore has its green products list. Malaysia has Nihijau, and there are plenty of others that are well established. It's essentially just a catalogue or an open access database of products and also sometimes companies which have met some sort of standard or performance threshold. So the key barriers that this tool can overcome, many things already been laid out by Ibu Helen about what are the barriers that are for those product purchasing, the lack of trusted information, lack of visibility of what EE products are and how they perform, how do manufacturers prove that their products are green and better than others, and on no motivation for people to spend more on higher quality products. The uses of these tools are also quite wide-ranging. It can be a reference point for a government to tag a fiscal incentive onto, such as a tax relief. It can be used as a simple procurement tool. It can be used for sure quality of a product. It can validate performance, and it also can be twinned to some sort of certification. The outcomes of the use of these kind of tools is first and foremost customer confidence, and I also think it's really important for non-experts, so those who don't know what to look for on a specification sheet, those who don't care about the efficiency of their product and just need a number and they need to know where they get it from. It's a really good tool just to be able to access that information nice and quickly. It can also drive competition across the market, drive innovation if people are pushing towards being on a list. And it also can lower the perceived risk around energy efficiency products and new products. And importantly, even more now, is it can act as a tool for green finance. Next slide, please. So one such tool is the Green Technology Selector run by EBRD. This is a list of available and eligible technologies which met minimum performance requirements verified by a group of experienced engineers. It was developed as a tool to help identify technologies eligible for EBRD financing. Started in 2018, it's currently available in the geographies that EBRD are active in. So although it's a collective tool, each country has its market-specific technology selector to ensure that the considerations are for the specific market that they're working in. And I think almost most importantly is how this tool is being used. It can be a central point for actors in the value chain. And what is happening is that financial institutions are using it as a tool to validate technologies on green projects, and they're integrating it into existing processes to de-risk investments in green projects, which is really exciting. And also they are developing specific products around the technology selector. So for example, developing a loan where they will only loan to the project if the technology is on the green technology selector. So what this is doing is attracting available green finance out there and helping that green finance be mobilized. And it's also lowering transaction costs. So you no longer have to have financial institutions who are having to bring in lots of external expertise to validate the greenness of a project. This is a tool to allow that to streamline that and reduce the amount of external expertise having to be brought onto those kind of validation processes. Next slide, please. So as a result, we think the GTS is a world-leading tool, and we really think it can accelerate the adoption of high-performing technology, and overcomes one of the key barriers of getting energy efficiency finance. It's getting the EU finance world connected to the technical world and getting those sides talking to each other. And as a result, we're really excited to be collaborating with EBRD to explore the expansion of GTS into China. So looking at the appetite from manufacturers, looking at trying to register people into manufacturers into the GTS system, and looking at whether it could be relevant to the domestic market as well as the commercial market. So it's a really exciting project that we're currently undertaking. But we're also looking to collaborate with EBRD further and expand the GTS globally. So if this is of interest, I do encourage you to reach out and get in touch if you're a government, financial institution, manufacturer or other. We're really keen to hear more if you want to help us drive this in other regions. So that's everything from me. I just want to say thank you. I'm last on the lineup, so thank you for staying on and listening to me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the webinar.
Thank you very much, Eloise. Great presentation, and you know, a nice segue from our conversation about standards that are important to performance. You know, examples of experience from a country, and then some interesting ideas about how we might finance some of this as well. What tools are available to us. Like you, I'm a big fan of the technology lists. The EBRD have been using that process for decades now in their areas of activity. And as you say, the governments like the UK have also done the same. So a really great way of getting financial institutions involved without having to develop that technical expertise, as you say. Also, the energy service company market, of course, is very interesting to the region, and it's another way of making sure that the technical aspects of energy efficiency projects can be looked after, not necessarily by the end user, maybe for whatever reason they don't have the capacity to do that. So thank you for closing that circle for us. I think that was very important. We don't have an awful lot of time for questions or comments, but I did want to just focus briefly on what these processes do for industry. What's in it for the private sector. And Philip, if you're still with us, you're a representative of a big company, of Schneider Electric, and you spend time working on these international standards processes. Can you just, for everybody to know, why does Schneider think it's important to invest in these processes?
Oh, you have seen roughly it's quite coherent, certainly coherent with what I've said, meaning that CO2 emission is a huge challenge. You have seen, I explained with few figures that the issue from tomorrow will be the cities and how to do more with less, I would like to say. So energy efficiency definitely is a way not to produce anymore, but to optimize the usage of the electricity. And definitely we as Schneider company is a global company in terms of solution in the field of buildings or industry. We consider that energy efficiency is one of the pillars, and the second pillar is how digital can bring added value also to that. So I will make the link with an initiative I lead for Europe under the umbrella of two associations that are KPL and CKPs. It is what is the impact of digitization for buildings, and how can we take benefit from this digital world to optimize and to ensure that this world of tomorrow will be sustainable.
Great. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And maybe Ibu Elin, do you think that these standardization processes, particularly in a region like ASEAN, do you think that can promote trade?
Again, my
Sorry.
this name. Sorry.
I was just wondering if we have these processes of standardization across the ASEAN region, excuse me, do you think that can promote trade? Is that good for industry?
Yes, of course. If this industry is good standing industry, yeah, because many of import product industries in Indonesia still wants to sell their, to sell their low quality product to in Indonesia. That actually for Indonesia it's bad, yeah, because we will be a country with rubbish, yeah. Yeah. So they always push our government. Yeah, we know about that. Yeah, so we have to have this standard in our region, not only in Indonesia, but in our region. So I think it's good to have ASEAN harmonization to protect our people here, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. And that's important, that whole idea of a regional minimum standard that protects the region. Eloise, would you like to just make a final comment on the value of also defining high performance standards and what that can do for industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, back in a previous life, I worked on the energy technology list back in the UK. So that was essentially a list where we defined high energy performance standards. And what we saw is competition, and we saw innovation, and we saw a real interest from the manufacturers to say, well, you know, if this exists, we want our name to be associated with this high level. And as a result, you don't want to be left behind. So if your competitor is doing it, you also want to be doing it. And so it's almost a idiom we use, you know, it's the carrot on the stick, where you're driving performance forward and not just punishing those who are badly performing, but almost awarding those who are pushing the boundaries. And I think that's something that we should really be focusing on ASEAN as well, because there's a lot of work to do about cutting out bad equipment, but there's also a lot of work to do to be making sure that we are pushing for the best air conditioners, we are pushing for the best refrigeration systems, especially in the unique conditions of ASEAN, where we have different electricity supply networks, and we have different conditions in terms of climate. So they need to be optimized for this region.
Great, thank you. And that's just another reminder of the importance of this process. Talking about a market of 650 million people enables manufacturers to really compete to produce efficient products at low cost, so that they're affordable to everybody. You know, they shouldn't be just considered something that's a luxury for the rich. They have to become the everyday commodity. And that's what these processes that we're all talking about are really aimed at. So, you know, just to recap, the idea of the COP26 call to action is to double efficiency of this group of products, to help governments work together to push that aspirational standard, but also it will require working with the standards bodies, with the manufacturers, and with the finance institutions. So thanks everybody for the presentations today. Like I said, this is the start of the journey. We want to talk to anybody who's on this webinar who's interested in talking further about the specific levels at which these steps on this ladder could be placed. And like I say, hopefully by having you know, an ongoing engagement over the coming months, we'll come to a position towards the end of the year or early next year, where governments can get behind this idea that this is the ladder that we want to promote, and we can then start the important business of accelerating the pace at which we increase energy efficiency, particularly in this really, really important region. So thanks everybody, and I'd like to end the webinar there.
Thank
Good day.
you.